hit the ground running, get some of the background information out of the way so we can get to the reasons all of you came here in the first place. Shift one last thing. I can see you all a little bit better. There we go. All right. So, real quick background on Mindmaven for a couple new names on here. For those that don't know, we're an executive coaching organization. We focus primarily in the world of startups. So a lot of work with founders, VCs, C-suite execs at startups, corporations. And we've had the opportunity to work with some amazing companies, some amazing people over the years. I've personally been doing this about 7 years, actually, in October. Just hit 7 years with Mindmaven. But the company's been around doing this mission for, we're probably coming up on 20, somewhere near 20 years at this point. And what we do, executive coaching organization is a very broad term. So to help narrow this down, to get clear on what our mission is, we're an executive coaching organization that helps leaders achieve what we call true greatness. We help them do that through relationships. And the interesting thing about true greatness is that it's a very personal, very subjective term. I could sit down with Jan and say, hey, Jan, when I say, you want to achieve true greatness, what does that mean for you? And Jan's going to have one answer, and Maria's going to have another, and Vaughn's going to have another. Everyone has their own definition of true greatness, whether it's just generating a certain amount of revenue, or if it's building a company that literally changes an industry, disrupts an industry, leaving a better world for your kids, environmental. That there's no right or wrong answer. There's no scope that's too broad, nor is there one that's too narrow. Whatever your definition of true greatness is perfect and wonderful. What we believe is that the only path to achieving true greatness is through relationships. Why Mindmaven was founded, is why we still operate, coming up on 20 years now. And it's a bit of a unique stance, I think. A lot of executive coaching organizations out there, they focus on time and leverage, and that's a big part of what we do. But relationships are the heart. And there's a very simple reason for that. We look at this from the perspective of a founder or of anyone trying to grow either a company or their role within a company. At the end of the day, you only have 3 resources to do that. Number one, you have jumping ahead a little bit here, but you've got your time. And your time, even if you work with us and you free up 6, 7, 8+ hours a week, which is great and phenomenal, time is always going to be finite. There's only so much time you can free up. There's only so much time you can and should be productive. You need downtime, you need rest, you need sleep, you need to invest into things that fill you up rather than just emptying you. So time is a finite resource. And you've got capital. Some of you are probably experiencing how finite capital can be. Now, if you're an early bootstrap company, it's especially finite, but even if you're established, even if you're a corporation, even if you're a unicorn who's raised tons of money, at the end of the day, capital is still a finite resource. You only have so much runway. You only have so much capital that you can go through. Which leads us to number 3, which is your network, your relationships. And if you leverage it properly, your network is the one asset that you have access to that is more or less infinite. You can continually generate opportunities that lead to more time, that lead to more capital through your network. And there's a buzzword, a buzz term in the startup world where leaders, founders want to be resource effective. They want to do a lot with a little because you're scrappy. You only have so much time. You only have so much capital. And the way you become resource effective is by leveraging your network. And the people who do that well, the people who are resource effective, they do that because they understand something very simple. At the end of the day, 80% of the breakthrough opportunities that you have received, will receive, they come from your network. They're not things that you generate in a vacuum. You don't just create them out of thin air. They come to you through other people, people that you know, people that know you, through a process called serendipity. So at the end of the day, serendipity is just the right person coming across the right opportunity and routing that opportunity to you. Very simple. And whether we're looking at founders or employees or anyone, regardless of job title, if you have gone through life, you experience moments of serendipity where something amazing happens because someone thought of you at the right time and connected you with an opportunity. It could be as big as helping you land your first client, or it could be much more personal. Maybe you met your partner, your spouse, your husband, your wife through an introduction of a friend. All of that is serendipity at work. Again, right person, right time, routing a meaningful opportunity to you. All of this, just to pause really quickly here, all of this making sense? Everyone following along so far? See some nodding coming in. Good, good. All right. And hopefully everyone is able to more or less agree with this. And hopefully you can think of an example or two of a time, either business or personal, when serendipity struck. And it was maybe even a make or break moment for your life or for your organization where, because this opportunity happened, you have a company. Maybe they became your biggest client, or again, you met your partner, whatever. The issue is that a lot of people leave this idea of serendipity up to chance. They wait, you wait for it to happen. And when it does happen, it feels great and it's motivating and it's inspiring and it's exciting. But people buy into this assumption that there's really not a whole lot that you can do to make serendipity happen. And we don't believe that. In fact, we founded an entire company around this idea that you can. In fact, we believe if you're in any sort of a leadership position or in any sort of a position where you are benefited by generating opportunities, it's not just something that you should do, this idea of owning the serendipity process. It's your job to do it. You have to do it. And the way that you do that is by understanding that at the end of the day, serendipity is really just a referral. Serendipity is a more fun word than referral. But if you think about it, a referral is just, again, the right person thinking of you at the right time and sending something your way. And the interesting thing about referrals, that's again kind of like with serendipity, even though most people just kind of more or less leave this idea of referrals up to chance and just something that happens when it happens and doesn't happen when it doesn't. There is a process that takes place behind every single referral you have gotten and ever will get. Most people aren't aware of that process, but if you are aware of it, if you understand what happens in the background behind every referral, you understand that you can leverage it. If you can leverage it, you can generate more opportunities from your network, which I think is what all of us are here to talk about today. So, very natural question is, if that's true, what drives referrals? What is that process? And thankfully for all of us here, it's a very, very simple two-step or two-factor process. At the end of the day, there's only two things that impact your ability to generate referrals or opportunities from your network. First is timing. Timing is literally just the moment in time someone in your network comes across a type of opportunity you want to hear about. When one of your, say, college roommates, who's also a founder, comes across an angel investor who just happens to be looking to invest in environmental protection startups, and yours fits the bill. That's timing. Or again, when one of your friends is out and meets this amazing person, they think, oh, you need to meet so and so. I think you'd really click, and fast forward 3 years, you end up married to this person. All that's timing. The challenge with timing is that it's something you really have no control over. You can't pick people up and force them to be at the right place at the right time. You don't really know what the right place or the right time is. That's the bad news. Can't really control it. The good news is if I could grant you X-ray vision into your network, the entirety of your network, I think you would be blown away how many opportunities there are at any given point in time. There are, regardless of the size of your network, there are probably more opportunities happening on any given day than you could hope to process, even with the best system, even with the best team in place. You're probably only hearing about 2 to 3% of your opportunities right now. And the goal isn't to go from 2 to 3 to 100%. That's unrealistic. But if we can go from 2 to 3 to 4 to 6, that's literally doubling the amount of opportunities that you hear about. And of course, you can potentially scale that further with the right tools and the right team. But even just doubling what you're hearing about right now is huge. But again, timing, good to know about, but you can't do a whole lot about it. So be aware of it, set it aside. We care about is factor number 2, which is mind share, which is really just how top of mind you are. In other words, when someone in your network is at the right place in the right time and they hear about an opportunity that you care about, how likely are they to think of you and route that opportunity to you versus literally anyone else that they know about who would also find this interesting, relevant, or valuable? Unlike timing, how top of mind you are with certain people in your network is more or less under your full control. The problem is that most people don't effectively manage their mind share with their network. And so they miss opportunities again and again. You're not aware that you're missing these opportunities, but it's happening. And if you've ever been, in fact, let me do this. Here's an example that I think will illustrate a scenario most, if not all of you have found yourself in once or twice, and it's not very fun. So let's say you get an introduction to someone. Someone in your network introduces you to someone else. This person seems interesting, valuable, whatever. So you decide, you know what, I'm going to have lunch with them. And so you do. You have lunch with them. Conversation goes well. The moment that lunch wraps up and you're walking out that door, your mind share with that person is more or less at 100%, which means in the very unlikely event that on the walk from the door to their car, this person encounters an opportunity that just seems perfect for you, really relevant, really valuable, there is a very high chance they're going to think of you. In fact, they may even track you down. They may run back to the restaurant and say, hey, you need to meet this person. That's usually not the way life works. The likelihood of someone encountering the perfect opportunity moments after lunch while your mind is at 100%, very, very unlikely. I'm sure everyone here knows that. And so what happens is we have lunch, and then nothing happens with this relationship. And over time, as you can see on our chart there, your mind share begins to decay and decay and decay and decay. And eventually it reaches a point where this hypothetical person that you met with, their brain is literally incapable of thinking of you, regardless of how perfect the opportunity is, because our brain is constantly rewiring itself to focus on what is most relevant to us. So let's fast forward, say 6 months, and you realize maybe you're, in the middle of the shower and you realize, oh, it's been, 6 months since I reached out to so-and-so. And so, you get out of the shower and you frantically send them a message and say, hey, I can't believe it's been so long. I wanted to, check in and see how things are going. Let's grab another lunch. And you do, 2 more weeks pass, you grab lunch with them. And one of the first things that they say when you walk in is, I feel awful. I wish you'd reached out sooner. I came across this amazing opportunity a couple weeks back. And, it's not relevant anymore. It's been passed on to someone else, or it's expired, or whatever. And in that moment, hearing about a missed opportunity is, 1, it's immensely painful. And 2, it can kind of cause you to think, well, why did that's perfect. Why didn't you think of me? You can kind of almost get upset with this person. But at the end of the day, if we're honest, who's really at fault here? Personally, I believe it's on you. You let your mind share with this person decay to the point where their brain was incapable of thinking of you. And so no matter how relevant, no matter how perfect that opportunity was, they're not going to think of you in a million years. So it's not their fault. It's a process that you chose not to manage. And all we really need to do is take a more active, intentional, proactive role in this process and make the graph look a little bit more like this. So same scenario here. You get introduced to someone, you have lunch with them, and then right after the meeting, you send a follow-up email. And then maybe a couple weeks after that, you send them some sort of content you think that they would find valuable or interesting based on the conversation. And a few weeks after that, you comment on a LinkedIn post or a Twitter, or I guess X now post. You have these regular touch points throughout the course of the relationship. And now, 4.5 months later, when they come across an opportunity, they are much more likely to think of and route that opportunity to you because you stayed top of mind. Now, it's not a guarantee, of course. In this line of work, there is no such thing as guarantees. But we don't really need guarantees. All we need to do is stack the deck in your favor. I don't know if there was a movie, I don't know when it came out, but it was called Bringing Down the House. General idea, for those who aren't aware, is it was a bunch of MIT students who went to a casino in Vegas, and they found a way to rig the odds of a game where they could, rather than win, I think it was something like 48% of the time, they changed it to 52. Very minor difference, but they were able to bring in millions of dollars just by shifting the odds a little bit in their favor. That's really all we're trying to do here. Again, the goal isn't for you to hear about 100% of the opportunities. That's not realistic. All we're doing is stacking the deck in your favor. All right. Really, really quick, just sum up of all this, because I've gone all over the place talking about this topic. Really quick, end of the day, what we're after here is opportunities. And opportunities, as we discussed, come more often than not from your network, from people that know you, that trust you, and people that you know and you trust. Opportunities are driven primarily by 2 factors. You've got timing, which is good to know, but we don't care about it because you don't have control over it. And then you have mind share, which is how top of mind you are. that you have full control over as long as you, manage it intentionally. So the natural follow-up question to that is, okay, what determines your mind share? And for anyone who has been following along, looking at the graphs, the answer is probably pretty obvious. Mind share is dictated by one thing and one thing alone. It's interactions. How are you interacting, or how often are you interacting with people? In other words, what's the frequency of the interactions? And more importantly than the frequency is what we call the experience impact. How meaningful, relevant, and or valuable is this interaction as perceived by the other person? Not how meaningful, relevant, or valuable do you think the interaction is, how do they perceive it? Both of these are important. Frequency matters. We want to make sure that you're interacting with people on a relatively regular basis. But what's more important than the frequency is that impact that you're having. It'd be kind of like good example. Let's say you were to order something from, say, Amazon. You order something from Amazon, and you're excited. You're waiting for this package to arrive, and one day, maybe 2 days later, thank you Prime, you see an Amazon truck pull up outside your house, and you're eager for it. You're watching the driver get out of the car. They're walking up the driveway. They're climbing up onto the deck. They knock on the door. You go to greet them, and you open the door, and they're just kind of standing there awkwardly, and you say, "Can I help you? Do you need something?" Because of course you're expecting them to deliver the package, and they say, "No, I just wanted to stop by, check in, see how you're doing," and then they turn around and leave. That's weird, but that's a good example of what tends to happen when people send empty interactions. It's like people expect, if they get an email from you, they should be expecting something of relevant value. If they don't get something of relevant value, it's like a delivery driver showing up and just wanting to say hi and taking time out of your day for no good reason. So we want to make sure we have that frequency, but we have that impact as well. That's really what's going to be most important here. And at the end of the day, what I'm building toward, and the habit that I want everyone to walk away from today's session with, is very, very, very simple. We can get you in the habit of sending one email a day to someone you would not otherwise have reached out to today. One email a day. That's all it is. There's a very good chance that over the course of a year, now if we look at a year, that's math was never my strong suit, but if we're saying, one email a day, 5 days a week, that's roughly somewhere in the neighborhood of 250, 260-ish new interactions over the course of a year. And there's no guarantee in this line of work, but it's about as close as possible to get to a guarantee that at least one of those interactions, if not multiple of those interactions, will lead to an opportunity you would not otherwise have encountered. And oftentimes all it takes is one breakthrough opportunity to justify all the other emails that you sent that didn't directly lead to something. Again, we're talking breakthrough opportunities here. These are things that make a meaningful impact. We don't need to generate hundreds of them over the course of the year. We need to generate a few of them. And all that takes is more effectively managing your relationships. So very, very simple stuff. In fact, maybe overly simple. Fact of the matter is, if it's simple, if it's easy, and I'm probably not sharing anything none of you have never heard before, none of you have thought of before. If it's so simple, why aren't we doing it? Why isn't it a habit that we're following already? One email is what, 5, maybe 10 minutes of your day? That shouldn't be that hard to find. And at the end of the day, the reasons are very simple. I think there's 3 barriers that tend to prevent people from effectively, consistently doing this over any meaningful period of time. And we're going to focus on dismantling those 3 barriers here on the call today. Number 1, starting at the most simple, is just knowing what you want from your network. Everyone showed up to this call, knowing the title, generate breakthrough opportunities from your network. But each person probably had a slightly different idea of what breakthrough opportunity meant. But I would bet many of you maybe aren't consciously aware of it or haven't taken the time to clearly define what it is that you want to generate from your network. So that's step number 1. What do you want? Number 2, once we know that, we can figure out who in the world you need to stay top of mind with. You probably have a network of thousands, if not tens of thousands of people. You cannot and should not try and stay top of mind with all 7,500 people that you know. We need to figure out who those most important people are. And then barrier number 3, what do you say? If you say figure out the most important people in your network, it can feel a little bit paralyzing trying to figure out how to interact with these people, especially if for some of them it's been years since you last reached out. How are you supposed to interact with them? And more importantly, how do you do that consistently without appearing spammy? And there's a fourth barrier that I probably won't go into much today, just for the sake of scope. But another piece of it is of course, time, making sure that you have the time to do this. There's a reason I'm starting with the most simple relationship habit, this one email a day, 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day. That should be relatively simple, relatively straightforward to find. But if we have time at the end, I'll go into a couple tactics around freeing up time or finding the time for this simple habit throughout the course of the day. But let's get to the bulk of it. Barrier number one, knowing what you want from your network. As we've talked about, we believe relationships drive success. It's why you're on this call. It's why we're hosting this call. We're big believers that you don't know anyone who has ever reached the top, reached true greatness, achieved their goals, whatever language you want to use. You don't know anyone who has done that without help from others. Relationships drive success, perhaps more than anything else, because they can generate an array of different types of opportunities, whether it's talent, hiring a great team, or introductions to clients, customers, partnership opportunities, or if you're fundraising, then getting connected with the investors, building relationships with potential acquirers. All of this can come in the form of referrals from your network. But until you know specifically what it is you want from your network, you're going to find it very hard to have any sort of a focused, consistent approach. So what I would like to do is our very first exercise here. This one won't take too long. I'm just going to put a timer on for, I don't know, we'll make it maybe 2 minutes. All I'd like you to do in this, I don't know, we'll say 90 seconds, create a bullet point list, jot it down on a piece of paper, have a Word doc or a Google Doc open, whatever feels best for you. Just take the time to physically write down some ideas of what you might want from your network when we talk about generating breakthrough opportunities. And please do take the time to actually write it, whether it's physically or digitally. You're going to get more value out of it than if you just think about it. I want you to have something that you can reference both over the course of this talk and after we wrap up this call. So with that, I'm going to stop talking for a moment. I will set a timer on my end. I'll circle back in about 90 seconds, 60, 90 seconds. And if anyone's comfortable, I'll ask if anyone wants to share, and then we'll move on. With that, I will let you think and write. And feel free, if you have nothing else, feel free to just drop things into the Zoom chat as well to track them. You can send it as a direct message to me, or if you don't mind it being seen by everyone, you can use the just the public chat as well. I see networking, talent, and mentorship. Wonderful. Excellent. I'd say we're about halfway there for the sake of time. Abraham, investors, talent, and insights. Good. And there's, of course, no right or wrong answers here. It doesn't have to be one of the examples on that list. It may be something totally separate. No right or wrong answers. Go ahead and stop this exercise there. If you're still thinking or still writing, that's entirely fine. I do just want to make sure that we're able to cover as much of the content here as possible today. So is anyone willing to just very briefly share and talk through some of the objectives they're looking for to get from their network? Feel free to unmute and jump in if you're willing to share. Everyone's so shy today. It's all right. Mike, I see yours in chat as well. You've got customers and product for customers. We have reference, additional work in sales, and insights into how they're using. Peg, we've got clients and references to clients. Wonderful. Good. Okay. Now I'll let y'all get away with a quieter response this time, but I'm going to push you a little bit harder on some of the others, some of the other exercises coming up here. And Peggy, I see your comment around making sure that you have something of value to offer. We're going to talk about that. But I'll just to give you a little bit of a teaser. Most people vastly overestimate how much value an email has to offer. The language that we'll often use around that is really at the end of the day, all your email needs to be is just north of neutral. You don't need to blow people away. Experience impact can sound a little bit like you have to have these amazing emails every time. You don't. As long as it is just north of neutral, as long as it is just meaningful, relevant, or valuable enough, you can send it. And the amount of junk email most people get, it's not hard for you to rise above the noise. And we'll be talking about that coming up. All right. Before I move on from this first exercise, this first barrier of knowing what you want is probably the simplest and most straightforward. Before we move away from that, any questions, any comments, or concerns? I want to make sure everyone's getting what they need from this to walk away and be ready to start investing into and leveraging these relationships. Right, I'm not seeing any hands go up or anyone unmuting. If there's anyone typing something in chat, feel free to. I can always circle back to it. But for the sake of time, I say we move on to barrier number 2. We've got the first one taken care of. You know what you want from your network. Great. That opens the door to us figuring out who it is that you need to stay in touch with. Because again, if you've been in business for any meaningful amount of time, you have a network that's thousands, tens of thousands of people, and not everyone in your network is created equally. Not everyone in your network is going to give you access to clients or references to clients. If we're looking at Peggy, your answers, Sandra, not everyone is going to give you access to talent or to mentorship, or Abraham, not everyone knows investors they can get you connected with. So we need to figure out who in your network matters. We don't want you boiling the ocean. If you try and stay top of mind with everyone in your network, you are going to exhaust yourself. You're going to put in a ton of work for what feels like not a lot of payout. Generally speaking, you're going to see much better results if you do much more consistent, more focused efforts on a smaller subsection, if you will, of people. But with that in mind, it can feel a little bit overwhelming if Jan and I were to sit down with you and say, okay, we know what you want now. Tell me all the people in your network who can give you access to that type of opportunity. Again, that could be a lot of people, and it can be paralyzing trying to think of individual people that you need to manage a relationship with, at least at this point in time. So what I would recommend is that we start with groups of people in your network rather than, say, individual people. What I would like everyone to do is hopefully you took the time to complete the exercise and you've got some idea of the types of opportunities you want. Based on that, the next step is figuring out what groups of people in your network have the greatest access to those types of opportunities. And groups can look a bunch of different ways. Again, there's really no right or wrong answer here, but it could be, former or existing clients might have access to, say, new clients, or board members, or peers or service providers, whatever. What groups of people that that you interact with have the greatest access to the types of opportunities you're looking for? What I would recommend is starting with just one type of opportunity. Say, Father Abraham, you mentioned investors. Great. Investors are one of the things you want to generate from your network. Based on that, you want intros to investors, you want intros for fundraising opportunities. Based on that, what groups of people do you know that have the greatest access to those types of opportunities? Which leads us to our next interactive exercise here. Very, very simple, just what I walked you through right now. All I'd like you to do is take at least one of the types of opportunities you identified and come up with 3 to 5 groups of people in your network who have the greatest access to those types of opportunities. Same thing, I'm going to set a timer for a little while, take some time to think through this. If you get through one type of opportunity very quickly, feel free to move on to another one. Move from fundraising onto talent, or from networking onto mentorship, whatever. But take the time to really figure out what groups of people in your network have access to the types of opportunities you're looking for. Set another stopwatch here, give you guys some time to think. And again, write it down on a piece of paper, Google Doc, use the Zoom chat here, whatever feels best and most natural for you. Just please do take the time to actually do it rather than just thinking through it. It's going to make your life much easier the further into this that we get, and especially after we wrap this call up today. And I see your answers there: previous clients, peers, friends in the industry. Do you mind sharing, Martine, what type of opportunity those groups are relevant for?
Sure, yeah, I'll just unmute for
perfect.
time-saving purposes. So I'm sitting in on this on behalf of my boss. So I'm thinking my boss works, like we work in ad tech. And so he has like a lot of friends that also work in like that tech industry space that he can, I guess, kind of like network with and sort of
Yes.
be introduced to some of their clients and previous clients as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love that. All right, we'll do another 20 seconds, give or take, give people time to wrap up. But again, if you are still working, still writing, feel free to do so. That is just fine. But I want to make sure we've got time to get through everything. All right. All right, let's stop it there. So we've got a couple examples of groups in the chat. Hopefully you've got yours written down. The next exercise coming up probably isn't terribly surprising, but now that we know what you want and we know what groups of people in your network have access to those types of opportunities, the next level down is who are the individual people within these groups who have what we call the highest ability and willingness to send you these types of opportunities. And let me give you a quick definition. When we say ability and willingness, it means something very specific. Ability means they regularly encounter these types of opportunities. It's not something that happens to them once or twice a year. Ideally, they are regularly in groups or in settings where coming across the type of opportunity that you care about is common enough. It doesn't need to be daily, weekly, or monthly per se, but it happens often enough that it's going to be worth you investing the time into strategically managing that relationship. That's ability. Do they encounter the opportunity that you want? Number two, willingness is a little bit different. Willingness is, again, like you, this person has a network of thousands of people. How likely are they to send this opportunity to you versus literally anyone else? The willingness can be a little bit more challenging to identify. The biggest indicator of willingness is also the most obvious. It's simply how have they done it in the past? So, and sorry if everyone can hear dogs barking in the background. My dogs are losing their mind right now for some reason. But have they sent you an opportunity in the past? That is proof of willingness. To give you a dramatic example of a lack of willingness, it'd be like let's say you wanted introductions to investors, and you might think, well, Elon Musk has had lots of investors, so he has the ability. He encounters those types of opportunities probably all the time. Does he have the willingness? So even if you've met with him, once or twice before, the likelihood that he would send those opportunities to you over someone else, unless you have a very close relationship with him, is probably very, very low. So ideally, when we're identifying the type of relationships we're talking about right now, ideally, these are not aspirational people that you met once 7 years ago and have never had a conversation with since, but you're thinking now, they probably have the ability and the willingness. They probably don't. It doesn't mean you can't invest into those relationships. But what I really recommend starting with is people who have that proven ability and willingness because they have done so before. Now, depending on how long you've been building your network and how much intentional work you put into this, this figuring out the individual people may be easy for you, or it may be a little bit more challenging. So if you really feel like you need to focus on more aspirational people because you don't have a bunch of people with proven ability and willingness, that is entirely all right. What I will say though is just to try and keep the aspirational people, I guess again, we'll say realistic. For most people, Elon Musk is not a realistic source of referrals. Again, he has the ability, but probably not the willingness. So focus on people you at least have some realistic connection to and could realistically, build a relationship with. So that's going to open the door to our next exercise. I'm going to make this one a little bit longer here just to really make sure people have the time to start building these lists out. But for each of the groups that you identified earlier, I would challenge you to come up with 3 to 5 names per group of individuals that you have some sort of a relationship with. Again, the better the relationship, the better. But ideally, these are not people who are completely cold, who you've never had any interaction with. The people you have some relationship with who likely encounter the types of opportunities you're looking for. 3 to 5 names per group. I'll set a stopwatch here for, I don't know, we'll do 2, maybe 3 minutes. And we'll circle back, see how people are doing at that point. I'm going to give you some time to think and write. While you're working through this, don't worry, I'm not interrupting you, still have time. But some extra context and background. We're working on right now, this group of people that we're identifying, it's a group of people that we call your legends. Your legends are essentially the most valuable people in your network, those with the highest ability and willingness. And at the end of the day, you might have a network of 7,500 people if we have everyone you've ever interacted with and talked with, maybe 15,000. But your legends are when I say the top, we're talking, the top 30, maybe 40 people in your network, those who are the most valuable, because these are the ones you're going to put the most effort, the most time into. That's what we're working on building here. You're not going to finish your list, on this call here today, but that's the way I want you to think about this. Who are the most valuable people in your network? We'll go for about another minute, and then we'll move on. Another 20 seconds, give or take. Don't worry, again, you're not creating your full list of legends here. You don't have to over edit this one. If you just want to jot some names down, you can always cull later. You can always realize down the road, what, this person probably isn't a legend. They're interesting, but they're not that valuable to the types of opportunities I'm looking for. All right. All right. Let's go ahead and stop the clock there. What I'd like to do is extend this a little bit. What I'd like you to create is what we call a legends list. This is a little bit more time consuming, of course, so we're not going to do it live on this call, but this is the homework I'd like everyone to or at least one piece of the homework I'd like you all to take away. The screenshot on there is, an Excel spreadsheet. There's actually a templatized spreadsheet we'll be sending you as a part of the follow-up email after this that you're welcome to use. Or if you have some sort of relationship management tool like Nimble or Relationally or Clay or, yeah, you could use Salesforce, but I'm personally not a fan. It can be high tech, like using a CRM. It can be low tech, like this spreadsheet here. Just a couple things I want to point out on this screenshot of the list. This is a bare minimum of the information I recommend having in your Legends list. Got the first name, last name, of course, company, the group. So we started identifying groups. What group does this person fall into? Or groups. You may have someone who falls into multiple groups, and that's totally fine. You don't have to choose just one. If someone is both, I don't know, a client and a service provider, well, then they can be in client and service provider. You might also consider having, one thing that's not in this screenshot is a tab for the type of opportunity you're looking to generate from this person. Whether it's, hey, I want intros to investors or intros to talent, whatever. Having an extra tab in here just to make it very clear on what opportunity you're looking to generate is great. The next, maybe a little bit more time consuming, but very important, the last contact date. When was the last time you interacted with this person? And we'll talk about this more in just a moment, but ideally your legends, the most important people in your network, the people that we're identifying right now, they should be getting something from you. Our general rule of thumb is every 45 days. Some sort of a meaningful interaction from you every 45-ish days. And you may realize, in fact, you probably will realize, unless you've been very intentional about relationship management in the past, as you start putting this together, you're going to see people that you have not been in touch with in the last 45 days. Some of your legends, it may be a couple, a couple weeks, it could be a couple months, or in some cases, and then you can see some examples here where it goes back years. And that's okay. Don't guilt yourself or feel bad if these people, haven't heard from you in a long time. We're going to talk about ways to fix that here in just a moment. But it is very, very important that you identify the last contact date, and ideally that this is kept up to date. So when you reach out to John Smith at the top here, you update that last contact date. That's why a dedicated tool can be handy. A lot of CRMs will link to your email account and will automatically update last contact dates. That can be really, really handy. We can send some tool recommendations if it'd be helpful in the follow-up email after this. But at the end of the day, a tool is just a tool. Our kind of rule of thumb, our mantra around tools, and anyone who's been in a speech before from us has heard it, is that the tool itself is never the solution. So don't obsess over finding the perfect CRM. Pick a tool that has some basic functionality. That being, ideally, it connects to your email address. 2, it allows you to group contacts. So, the Excel spreadsheet here, of course, you have to manually say, okay, former client, influencer, whatever. But a lot of the CRMs out there enable you to put people into buckets or categories. That can be really nice. So find a tool that does those 2 things, and it's going to be just fine. Don't obsess over finding the perfect tool. So that's last contact date. The other thing that I really recommend having, this is going to be hugely valuable, and most CRMs do not have this field built in by default. So I guess one other thing that is nice in a good CRM is the ability to add custom fields. But we met statements. The we met statement is exactly what it sounds like. When did you initially connect with this person? Who introduced you to them? Or what conference did you run into them at? This, by capturing this information, if it has been, say 2021 or hell, 2017 since your last contact date with this person, being able to reference how you initially got connected with them can be really, really important in trying to reestablish contact with them. You remember them, they may not really remember you. So have that information in there so you can reference it and say, hey, I'm not sure if you remember me, but we met at and these are actually awful examples of a we met statement. We need to update this. They should be more specific. You should not say we met at a conference in New York. Say we met at, TEDx in 2017 in New York. That's fine, but have the specifics in there. It may take some time. You may have to dig through your email a little bit to figure out when and how you initially connected with this person. But this field is a gold mine of value in both the short term and the long term. So please take the time to figure that out. Again, we don't have to do it live here now for the sake of time. But when you're creating this list, whether you're using the spreadsheet template we're going to send you after this, your own tool or whatever, just make sure that you have that information. All right. I'm going to pause there for just a second to open the floor to any questions or comments before we move on. Someone rushing to unmute. I never know if that's a good or a bad sign. All right. Okay. So quick rehash on where we're at so far. So hopefully, if you've been following along with the exercises, you have what you want from your network. You have the groups of people who are going to give you access to that. And then within the groups, you've started to identify who your legends are. Legends, of course, being the people with the highest ability and willing to send you the most relevant types of opportunities. It's probably not a complete list right now. That is okay. But as a reminder, as you're working on this after the fact, try and limit yourself to 40 max. And if you don't hit 40 is not a number you have to hit. If you have 7 legends, that's fine. I'm giving you a max, not a minimum. I would rather you have a more focused effort on the most valuable people rather than you hit some arbitrary number just because. The reason we say 40-ish is because if we, well, actually, that's a great segue into our next slide, our next barrier here, which is knowing what to say, making sure that you provide value. Again, like we talked about, being top of mind is about interactions. You want to be interacting with these people. And you need to focus on 2 things, frequency and experience impact. The frequency, when it comes to your legends, our recommendation is they should be hearing from you about once every 45 days. No more than 45 days should pass without some sort of interaction from you. And that interaction can, and in most cases, should be very simple. This is not, I need to have lunch with them every 45 days. You don't. If you have some sort of a touch point that is meaningful, that's all that matters. And so if you limit yourself to, say, 30 to 40 legends and roughly they're hearing from you once every 45 days, it's about 1 email to each person a month. That's doable. You start expanding beyond that, then it starts to feel a little bit unwieldy. So that's why we recommend putting that cap on it. All right. So frequency, and then again, experience impact, making sure that your legends perceive your interactions as meaningful, relevant, and or valuable. And the very logical question that who had asked about actually being Peggy had asked, making sure that these emails are perceived as valuable. That is the right concern to have. Experience impact is more important than frequency. I don't want you spamming these people. That's going to have the reverse impact. If you're sending them an email every 45 days to tick a box, but all you're saying is, hey, it's been a while, we should catch up, that's not going to work. There's no experience impact in that. So how do we make sure that the emails that you're sending are going to be perceived that way? Again, I hinted at this before, but just to set this stage again, experience impact sounds very dramatic, but really all we're looking for most interactions is just north of neutral. You do not have to blow people away. You just have to be relevant, and being relevant is not as hard as you may think. So I'm going to share 3 different types of interactions. They're all going to be largely email focused. Email is a very simple way, and again, our core habit here today is 1 email a day to someone you would not otherwise have reached out to. We're going to go through 3 different email strategies, and the hope, and I'd say even expectation, is that you could use one of these email strategies for any of these people who end up making it onto your legends list. The first one that we're going to talk about here is the 5 freebies. 5 freebies are they're not email templates so much as they're email inspirations. 5 types of emails you can send to just about anyone in your network at any point in time. And I'll talk through all 5, and then we'll have an exercise again coming up here shortly. But number 1, I am almost always tempted to just skip over because it is so obvious, and it's so, Patrick, our founder, always calls it the bottom feeder approach. If you can do literally absolutely nothing else, you can always, at least once to someone in your network, send the, hey, it's been a while, we should catch up, what's new in your world ping. If you can do nothing else, you can do this. You can only do it once, typically. You cannot send this message to someone every 45 days. But if you're really struggling and you can't make anything else happen, you can fall back on this to buy yourself a little bit of time. But that's all the time I'm going to spend on this. I think everyone is very familiar with this email. Number 2, I think this next one is just as easy and infinitely more impactful than the it's been a while ping. It is a thank you email. Very simple, straightforward thank you email. The hope is that, again, these people who make it on your legends list, you have some sort of relationship history with. These are not cold people who have never met you, never had a conversation with you. And so if there is some sort of relationship history, even if it's been 4 years since you last reached out to them, I practically guarantee that there is something that you could find to thank them for. And it can be something very, very minor. It can be some advice they gave you, or maybe they made an introduction and you ended up hiring this person, or maybe the introduction didn't lead anywhere, but it meant a lot that they thought of you and made this intro. It doesn't matter if this thing that you're thanking them for happened years ago. In fact, in many cases, it is better if it happened years ago, because if they get an out of the blue thank you message from you, a genuine thank you message from you for something they haven't thought about in 3.5 years, it's going to make them feel really good. It's going to make them feel really, really good. So an out of the blue thank you email feels great. The key, though, the most important part of a thank you message, or really any of these, but especially a thank you message here, is specificity. Don't just say, hey, you gave me some great advice. I really appreciate it. It's made a big impact on my life. You could send that to anyone. The gold standard for especially interacting with your legends is if an email could more or less be copied and pasted and sent to anyone, it's not specific enough. So thanks for your advice. It's been impactful. Doesn't pass that test. You could probably copy and paste that and send that to 80% of your legends. What was the advice they gave you and how did it impact you? Doesn't mean this has to be a complicated email. You can see this email here is still relatively short. That's 3, 4, maybe 5 sentences long. But if you were to get an email like the one that's on the screen there, you just imagine getting a thank you email from someone that you haven't thought about in a little while, or for something that you had forgotten that you did for them. It's going to leave you feeling really good. And that's what I talk about when I say the experience impact doesn't have to be massive. It's just north of neutral. This is probably going to put a smile on their face. And even if they don't reply to this email, there's a very good chance they will, for what it's worth. But even if they don't reply to this email, this is investing into that relationship. So the next time you send them a message, they're more likely to open it and review it, because the last time you sent them an email, they felt good. They're probably going to want to open up whatever you send next. So that's a thank you message. Very, very simple. Next up, freebie number 3 is asking for a favor. Now, this is built on a Ben Franklin quote, actually. There's a great story that I won't rehash because I don't remember all the details. Long story short, he had a political rival, and he found that he could just not get on the same page with this guy. It was not a good relationship. And what he ended up doing is asking this person for a favor. I think he asked for a book, if he could borrow a book or something very, very minor. And the guy agreed. It was a very simple favor, so he agreed. And then he found that their relationship increased exponentially from there. And there's a now famous quote from him saying, if you want to make a friend, ask for a favor. It goes a little bit counterintuitive because people might think, well, if I want to make a good impression, I should offer to do something for someone. Not necessarily. First off, people like feeling like an expert. So if you give them the opportunity, whether it's asking for advice, asking for feedback, whatever, most people like that as long as the ask is small. That's the big thing here. If the person who receives your favor email has to stop and ask themselves, do I have time to do this? It's too big an ask. So asking for introductions is really hit and miss. Introductions can be a really big ask. So I'd steer away from that, even though I think this example kind of hints at asking for introductions. The example here says, hey, we're looking to hire. This is my first big round of hiring. Do you know of anyone I could talk to about making great hiring decisions? That's not that bad. You could potentially go for that, but I would make the ask even smaller and say, hey, have you read any books, or are there any podcasts or anything that you found valuable around hiring great people? That's much easier. They don't have to stop and think, hey, does so-and-so want to meet so-and-so? Can I facilitate this introduction? Introductions are big asks. But again, simple favors that someone can say yes to and deliver on in the moment can be really powerful. And the other point, just kind of worth making on this, I'm probably going to butcher this because I am not super into neuroscience, but the reason this works is because of a little something called cognitive dissonance. And long story short, what it means in the context of this is we only do favors for people that we like, but we don't do favors for people that we don't like. So if you can ask for a favor so small that of course they're going to do it, in their brain they're going to think, well, I only do favors for people I like. I have done this for so-and-so, therefore I must like this person. None of that is a conscious thought going through their head, of course. But again, we only do favors for people that we like. So if you can get them to do you some sort of a solid, then it's going to invest into and build that relationship. So that's number 3. Ask for a very small, very, very simple favor. Number 4, probably the most challenging of the 5 freebies, and frankly, often not one that I recommend usually sending on its own, but it's an apology. And again, an apology for something minor. If you did something catastrophic to the relationship, if you ran over their cat 7 years ago, maybe don't resurface that pain for them. But if you realize it's been 3 years since you reached out and you feel bad because that you haven't invested into the relationship the way that you'd like to, apologize for that. If you had to cancel your last meeting with them and never got another one back on the calendar, apologize for that. As long as it's genuine. I'm not asking you ever, I'm not ever asking you in any of the work that we do when it comes to relationships to do something inauthentic or to send an apology email just to get some points. It has to be something that you genuinely feel some degree of regret around. Not, earth-shattering regret, but I feel bad that I haven't reached out. As long as you genuinely feel bad about that, great, go ahead and send it. Don't apologize if you're grateful you haven't talked in 3 years and you're dreading, starting this relationship up again, but they're really well connected, so you're going to do it anyway. And that's not going to work. Authenticity never works in the short term or the long run when it comes to effective and good relationship management. But the reason I said I don't like sending this one off alone is usually what I'll do is open. If I need to, I can open with, hey, I just realized it's been 2.5 years since I last reached out. I feel bad about that. I value our relationship more than that, would like to do better. And then I might segue into a thank you. You were on my mind. I realized you gave me this advice, 3 years ago. I don't know if you thought about this since then, but you told me X, Y, Z. So an apology can be a great way to lead into one of the other freebies. But an apology just on its own, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it, but I feel the emails tend to feel a little bit more natural if it's not just an apology. All right. Number 5, probably my favorite here. Anyone who is a little bit familiar with Mindmaven might be familiar with the term positive alacrity. It's maybe one of the things I'm most proud about being a part of here at Mindmaven. It's kind of a term, movement maybe feels too big a term to use, but it's something that we came up with that's started to catch on. And it's been fun to hear other people use the term. And the general idea of positive alacrity is it's the habit of anytime that you think something positive about someone else that you genuinely believe, take the time to actually say it. We have so many positive thoughts, or most of us have so many positive thoughts about others over the course of the day, even if it's just minor positive thoughts, but we don't think them. We're too busy. We have to get to the next meeting. We have to finish preparing for, the next whatever. And so we have these thoughts and we move on with our day, even though it could make this other person's day if we took the 14.5 seconds to voice what we were thinking. And this last freebie is really just about practicing that skill. We take someone off your legends list. And if I were to say, hey, Jan, tell me one thing about John Smith that you genuinely appreciate, something about his personality, something that he did, you could probably come up with something for almost everyone. And kind of like with the thank you message, this is going to make someone's day. And the difference, for what it's worth, if it's not obvious, the difference between a thank you message and a positive, like alacrity type message, this thank you is usually related to something very, very specific that they did for you. Positive alacrity is more about who they are as a person. So you could potentially combine the two into one. You could say, hey, I don't remember if you remember this advice you gave me, but blah, blah, blah. Also, here's what that advice tells me about you as a person. And I wanted to let you know that I really appreciate that. I'm grateful for that, in my life. Whatever. But this one is hugely powerful. It makes people feel good. There's not enough positivity in the world, frankly. So if you can take the time to shine light on what you appreciate about someone, you're going to make their day. And as a result, you're going to make your own day through practices like this. It just enables you to feel much closer to people. And if we're talking about pure experience impact, a 5-liner positive alacrity email has huge experience impact on someone while requiring typically very, very little work. So how are we doing on time? Doing okay. All right. Next exercise I'd like to do. This one is maybe a little bit more involved. Now the slide here says to pick someone off your list and do the thank you message. You do not have to do the thank you one. Pick one of the freebies other than the first one. The it's been a while ping does not count. I will not accept that as your exercise. pick one person off the list, pick one of the 4 freebies, a thank you, an apology, a favor, or just genuine positivity. And all I'd like you to do, you don't have to write a ready to send email right now, but pick what it is that you want to say to them and just do a couple bullet points on what that email will say. That way you've got this pre-thought out, you've got it pre-written, and then ideally right after the speech, especially if I give you a little bit of time before whatever's next for you, you can take the time to put that email together and send it off. So I'm going to start a timer here again. We'll give you, let's say, maybe 2.5 minutes. Again, you don't have to go for a full ready to send email, although if you can, more power to you. Just jot down who the person is, which of the freebies you're going to use, and more or less what you want to say. And remember that what makes any of these emails stand out is always going to be specificity. So if you say, I'm thanking this person for advice, identify the advice they gave you and the impact it had on you. That's what's going to make a thank you message stand out, or any of these for that matter. All right, I will stop talking, let you all think and write. About 1 more minute. We've already knocked out 1. Feel free to overachieve and go for another if you want. Okay, about another 30 seconds. Jot down any last points so you can refresh your memory when you're ready to write this email after the call. My hope is that no one is sitting there really struggling to come up with what to say. I'm hoping you're seeing how easy these freebies can be to use. And if you're really, really struggling, there's a good chance that you're overthinking it. Just keep that north of neutral thing in mind. The thing you're thanking them for does not have to be something that completely changed your life. If they went just a little bit out of their way to do something for you, frankly, that might make the out of the blue thank you even more meaningful. The fact that you thought of that and remembered it, it's going to make a great impact. All right. Good. We will pause there. Hopefully you've got some good notes that you can take into an email draft after this call. But let's move on from the 5 freebies and talk about something a little bit different, a little bit more, I guess, reactionary is more the word for it. But pending a better name, and if anyone comes up with a better name for this, please let me know. But we have something that we tentatively call value drops, and it's a very, very simple habit. I guarantee that just about everyone on this call consumes content in some way, shape, or form. And maybe you scroll Facebook, maybe you go to TechCrunch every single day, maybe you watch videos or listen to podcasts, or maybe you're a big book person. If you consume content and you come across something that you find interesting, relevant, valuable, whatever, fact of the matter is, I almost guarantee that there's at least 3 to 5 other people in your network, whether they're a part of your legends or not. There are 3 to 5 other people who would also appreciate whatever piece of content you just enjoyed. So if you can get in the habit of any time that you consume a piece of content that causes you to stop and think, oh, that's interesting. I've never thought about it that way. That's valuable. Oh, I'm going to incorporate that. Whatever. Take the time to share it. It's going to take you an extra 2 minutes. It can be more or less the same message to everyone with some minor tweaks and customizations. But get in the habit of sharing content or tools or resources that you find valuable with other people. Again, very, very simple message. It can be just something like, hey, I was thinking back to our conversation on AI tools a couple of years ago. I remember you mentioning how much you'd love to have AI be able to manage your inbox. not sure if this was on your radar recently, but I came across a tool called Shortwave, pretty much exactly what you and I discussed those years ago. I was impressed with these features. I thought you'd enjoy it, etc. It's sharing content. It's stating why you find it valuable. It's sharing why you think they would find it valuable. And the goal isn't to turn our hypothetical person here into a shortwave user. Whether or not they end up checking out the tool or watching the video or reading the content you send really doesn't matter. If they do, great, fantastic. That gives you some common ground that you can discuss. But what's more important is the fact that you thought of them and shared it with them, which is why some degree of personalization here that shows that you know them and you care about what they care about is important. So however you consume content, whether it's, again, using tools, watching videos, whatever, this could almost be a daily habit for you. Whatever you're doing, however you consume content, take the time to share it with, even if it's just one other person that's initiating a new interaction every single day that you wouldn't otherwise have done. By just taking something you're already doing, you're already consuming the content. Why not share it with someone else? Another great way to do this, one way that I like doing this one, is newsletters. I get a lot of AI newsletters. That's a big part of my job right now, just testing out different AI tools. And it's kind of low-hanging fruit. Everyone is excited about or interested in or concerned about AI right now. So anytime I skim through a newsletter and I see some interesting tools or insights or takeaways or whatever, it's very easy for me to just forward that and say, hey, just got this newsletter today, thought that you might appreciate it. I know we were talking about, this a little while back, or whatever. I have some extra line in there to make it relevant to the person who's receiving it. But sign up for a couple emails that you think will be, one, interesting to you, and two, interesting to your network, and be able to forward them from time to time. It's a really easy process. So on that note, another little exercise here. Make sure that I leave you with another email you can send this week. Pick another person off the list. Don't overthink it. Just pick the second name on the list or the seventh name on the list, whatever. Doesn't matter who it is. And then find one piece of value that you could send to this person. Maybe it was a book that you just read. It could be a book that you read 7 years ago. It doesn't have to be recent. What I'd like you to do is, for that person, for that name you chose, define what it is you want to share with them, whether it's a tool that you use, a book that you read, a video that you watched, a podcast you listened to. Figure out what it is you want to share in a sentence or two, or just in this case, just a bullet point, why you like it. What did you get out of that? What did you appreciate about the book? What do you like about the tool? And then, why do you think this person would like it? And I think what you'll find is, and I'll set a timer here in just a moment, but I think what you'll find is these first 2 points here are pretty much templatized. If you were to take this book recommendation, you could probably send it to 10 people. You could recommend the book to 10 different people, and all you have to customize is this line right here, why you think this specific person would like it. Again, this is not a paragraph of here's all the things I think you'll take away. Just a one-liner, something that you know about them that makes you think they would appreciate it. That's reason enough. Whether it was a conversation you had with them in the past, if they regularly post about something on social media, whatever. What indicates to you that this person would appreciate it? With that, I'm going to set another timer. Pick a name, come up with what you want to share, why you think they'd like it, why you like it, and if before the timer's off, feel free to pick another name and do it again. Start building up a collection of emails that you can stagger out over the rest of the week. For the sake of time, we'll make this one a little bit shorter. But another item or two I want to get through today. About one more minute on this one. All right, start wrapping up those bullet points. We'll go just another 10 seconds here. And then we'll move on to outreach strategy number 3. All right, very good. So we've got the 5 freebies. We've got this value drop. Number 3 is maybe the most involved of the 3, but can be really powerful. We call it trigger touch. General idea is you are using, for the sake of this conversation, we'll say news. You're using news about people in your network to stage interactions. And this can be very, very simple news, like you're on LinkedIn and you see someone is celebrating 7 years at their company. LinkedIn always gives you the, hey, like their post or congratulate them, and then it auto writes like a 3-word congratulatory message. That's not what I'm talking about here. The idea is use the anniversary. That's great. The 7 years at a company is fantastic. Use that to stage an outreach of some kind, rather than just doing LinkedIn's auto thing. Send them an email or send them a LinkedIn message if you want, but make it better than the standard, hey, congratulations on 7 years. Or you can be a little bit more involved. You may see news articles about this person at the company. Maybe they raised a certain amount of money, or they just made a pivotal hire, or not always good news. Something bad happened. They lost a key member, or the company's dissolving in worst case scenarios. All of these are great touch points for relationships, but I feel like social media has trained us to like things and then move on, as if liking a post is the same as truly interacting with someone, and it's not. What I'd like you to do is see these stories, these news stories, or things that you hear about in passing through your network. See them as springboards for outreach and for starting a conversation with someone and delivering an interaction that you can almost always be certain is going to be perceived as meaningful, relevant, and valuable to the person, because it is in response to something that is going on in their life right now. It doesn't get much more relevant than something that is happening to them right now. And again, there's a bunch of ways that you can do this, from scrolling social media, which is fine, probably the most time-consuming, the most distraction-prone way to do it, but that is a way to do it. The next level up would be setting up, say, Google Alerts for their name or their company, and then you can get emails when their name or their company makes the news. That's an okay way to do it as well. Google Alerts can be a little bit clunky and not always 100% accurate, but it can give you something. Probably the best tool that I have found to do it, though, just to give everyone a quick tool recommendation here. There's a tool out there called Wren Systems. Came across it a couple months ago. Basically, what it does is there's a web interface, there's a mobile app version. You can see on the screen there on the left-hand side. You tell it what relationships are most important to you, and it gives you more or less a news feed of what is going on with those people. What news stories that come out about them, their team, or their organization. It just gives you something that you can scroll through. And then the nice thing is at the bottom of every single news story, as you can see here, there is a reach out button. You can press that reach out button, and what it will give you is some pre-written emails. It uses AI to pre-write better than nothing emails. That's what I'll call them. They're a decent starting point, but they're never as personalized as they should be. But it always gives you 3 options. It gives you a catch-up email template, a congratulations email template, and an offer support. There's no one best option here. In this example from Chauncey's news, which I think was about raising money for a part of the company. The best one that we got was from offer support. You would think it would be congratulate, but the best one just happened to be offer support here. So there's not a whole lot of consistency. The nice thing is it writes it for you, and then you can hit this open email button, and it will open up this as a new draft for you in your inbox. Already, it has the recipient in there. It has all the text that it recommended. And then what you have to do, please do this, is not press the send button. Please take the time to personalize this message. This really isn't bad. You can see here AI does a pretty good job in that it does read the article, and it references something very specific. Congratulations on the success, highway benefits. That's great. That's better than hey, congratulations, I saw the news. That's awful. But this isn't much of a step above it. So add an opening paragraph that's personalized to the relationship. It can be as simple as this one that Patrick sent out. It's been a while since we last touched base. If I remember correctly, you shared that you'd fallen ill. I hope you're back to good health these days. Again, not fantastic. Ideally, you have something a little bit more personal you can check in on. But if you don't, that's still a huge improvement over the email example on the left. And then add another couple tweaks in there just so it feels like it's coming from you and you can feel confident that the person receiving it will appreciate it. Again, we're not blowing people away here. We're not trying to write the best email they've gotten all day. Just north of neutral is what we're aiming for here. And this might be something that you would see on LinkedIn or Twitter. You would like and move on. Instead, you are using a tool like Ren, or again, you can do it completely manually. This is not tool dependent. But Ren and tools like it do make it a little bit easier to draft individual outreaches to people based on what's going on in their network. Now, obviously, this is very timely and reactive, so we can't really easily do a exercise based around this, so we're not going to, also for the sake of time. But I'd encourage you to check out Ren or just be more intentional about how you're using different social media tools. Consider setting up some Google alerts for not everyone in your network, of course, but for the legends, people who make your list, so you can start seeing when they're in the news and if you can use that to reach out. It's not going to work every single time, of course, and you may want to reach out to someone and there may be nothing about them in the news because they're just not the type of person or company that makes the news. That's fine. Trigger Touch will not work for everyone and it will not work for everyone all the time, but it is another tool in your tool belt to make sure that you're touching people proactively. All right. That is where I'll leave that. The final thing I'll touch on, because there is just enough time, I think. Let me see if I can find it in here. I could have sworn I updated the slide deck. That's driving me crazy. Then, I mentioned before that there's kind of an invisible fourth barrier around this, which is finding the time for it. We're just going to do this voiceover, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So finding the time for it. There's a lot more, of course, that you can do around proactive, effective relationship management beyond just the habit of sending one email a day, and that's great. But for the sake of our conversation here today, let's say that's all you do. All you really need to do in that case is find, say, 5 to 10 minutes per week, or, I'm sorry, 5 to 10 minutes per day, or say maybe 30 minutes a week. If you want to batch it and do 5 emails a week rather than 1 a day, that's also fine. So long story short, we don't need to free up a ton of time. We don't need to say, pair you with an EA and have this EA give you back the 6, 7, 8 hours, although I'd love to do that for you. But for the sake of this, we just need a minor shift. And probably the easiest way to adopt a habit like this is through something called action triggers. Long story short, and I will do this quick, action triggers are a very well-studied, very well-researched process to dramatically increase the likelihood that a new habit actually sticks. General idea is you're going to do is take an existing habit and piggyback a new habit onto it. So the sending 1 email a day, that's a new habit. Finding the time for that in your already busy, already built out day, that can be challenging. But if we take something you're already doing without thinking about it, something you don't have to schedule, something you don't go out of your way to do. I do not have to schedule sitting down with a cup of coffee every morning. I am going to make it happen every morning, or I am not going to get through the day. So I can take my existing habit when I sit down with a cup of coffee and piggyback a new habit on. When I sit down with a cup of coffee, then I will say, send 1 email to someone I wouldn't otherwise have reached out to today. And that's much easier to do than to try and, again, establish a brand new habit in an already pretty well established, pretty well structured day. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to do an exercise on that live. But what I would encourage everyone to do after this is identify 1 existing habit at ideally the start of your day. I recommend trying to do this at the start of your day rather than fit it in elsewhere. Find a habit you do at the start of your day, whether it's getting to the office or, again, having a cup of coffee, opening TechCrunch, sitting down to have breakfast, no right or wrong answer. Find your existing habit and then turn it into an action trigger with a when then statement. When I make a cup of coffee, then I will draft and send 1 email to someone I wouldn't otherwise have reached out to today. That's really all it takes. Action triggers are very simple. If I had the slides, I'd be able to give you the numbers, but I think there was a massive meta study that had like 12,000 participants that showed that action triggers made people, when it came to difficult habits, it boosted the success rate from, I think, 27% up to like 74%. So as simple as it sounds, the impact can be huge. So I'd recommend considering it. It's a great way to get something like this to happen consistently. And with that, I know we only have about 5 minutes before the end of the time we had slotted. I try and save more time for questions than I did today. But let me open the floor a little bit. I can go a little bit over if there's anything anyone wants to dive into around this topic. Oh, actually, before I do that though, if you think any of your questions, one more thing I want to share the screen on because we are very excited about it, and my team will be very unhappy with me if I do not talk about it. We've been very hard at work. For those who don't know, we just relaunched our the Mindmaven website, and a part of that redesign was putting together what we call the toolbox, the Mindmaven toolbox. And if I can just get my screen to share properly, I will. There we go. All right. So you can kind of think of the Mindmaven toolbox as a kind of a coach in a box, or I don't want to say a blog, because the blog is far too simplified for what this is, but it's a collection of different tools, very tactical resources, templates, spreadsheets, habits that equip people with the habits that we teach, the things that we teach, the principles that we teach. It's the most accessible I think we have ever made our content, and it's been really cool to watch people's reactions to it. So I'll send a link to it in the follow-up email, but you can also scan the QR code on the screen. It's, the URL is very simple, just mindmaven.com/toolbox. If this has been relevant, if some of the exercises I've walked you through today have been relevant, you're going to find a lot more of tactics like that, very, very actionable step-by-step processes in that toolbox, and I highly recommend checking it out. The team puts a ton of work into it. I love what they put together, and I think you guys will too. All right. Any questions, any comments, anything before I let everyone get back to their day? All right.
All good. Appreciate it. It was very valuable. Thanks, Connor.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you, Devin. This is, as I mentioned at the start, this is really the first workshop style session that we've done where it's meant to be a little bit more interactive. Did this format feel good for this type of content, or do people would you have preferred it was just a, Connor talks for 60 minutes and then we do the work afterward?
No, it's
I
nice
thought
to
it
do
was great. I would like to get a transcript of it, Connor. Thank you. Sorry,
Yeah,
I didn't
absolutely.
interrupt you, Devin.
all good.
I appreciate that. That's good to hear. And I can definitely, I think we can grab a transcript. I use a meeting tool called Fathom. You might see it in the room with us, and it does a very good job of putting together transcripts. And of course, there's going to be the recording we send out as well. All right. Any other questions around this? If anyone's feeling like they don't have what they need to hopefully send out a couple emails this week, please let me know. I'd love to talk through any of the tactics that you might be feeling stuck on.
No, it's really
All
good.
right. Thank you, Vaughn. I appreciate
Very
that.
good. That was enjoyable. Sorry I had to miss that 20 minutes while I was in that call, but I did get that customer. So
Hey, congratulations. That's
Thank you.
great. That's great. Then I'll make sure to get you the recording so you can catch the 20 minutes you weren't able to be there for.
cool.
And if you have any questions on that, feel free to shoot me an email. As always, my inbox is open. Just connor.d@mindmaven.com. Everyone here is going to be getting an email from me anyway, just asking for feedback and thoughts. You can also just reply to that. But yeah, inbox is open. This is frankly the part of the work at Mindmaven I am most passionate about, the relationship work. So always happy to talk through tactics or help people overcome hurdles around that. Otherwise, though, I think I can let everyone hop to whatever's next in their day. Appreciate you making the time. I know 90 minutes isn't a small ask.
Peace out,
Thanks,
man.
Connor.
Thanks.